Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Baseball Discourse. I'm Dan Lavallo, and before we get to the New York Mets, can we begin by tipping our caps to the San Diego Padres? The New York Mets did not lose to the Bad News Bears. They lost to a very good San Diego Padres club. I go back to the trade deadline when the Padres were very, very active. And at the time, I, on social media, said if you're the Braves, if you're the Mets, if you're the Dodgers, you should be very, very worried. And the Mets fans, of course, jumped, saying, I had no idea what I was talking about. Now, you might be able to make a strong case. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do know that the San Diego Padres are playing the Dodgers on Tuesday night, and the New York Mets are arranging tee times. And something else to think about. The New York Mets, the high payroll New York Mets, the 101 win New York Mets, what did it get them? 3 more games in the season compared to the 78 win Boston Red Sox. And you can make a strong case now that the Mets were as disappointing as the Red Sox were. But back to the Padres. I wrote on social media at the time this was going to be a tough team. And I gave A.J. Preller and his staff a lot of credit simply because the Padres knew they were not going to win the National League West. The Dodgers were way out in front, but he was arranging his club for postseason play. He was arranging his club to be prepared in a short series where anything can happen. And as it turns out, the Padres are poised. And Juan Soto's not even tearing the cover off the ball yet, but you know he will. He did get a big base hit last night, lowered the boom on the Mets. The air was already sucked out of a not sold out City Stadium, by the way. How does New York, how do the Mets not sell out that game? The deciding game. How is that game not sold out on Sunday night, with the next day being a holiday, by the way? How does that happen in supposedly baseball-rich, baseball-loving New York City, the Big Apple? The Mets don't sell out. But anyway, the Padres had their team poised, and Soto had the big hit to make it 6-0. The air was already sucked out of the ballpark, and when he got that 2-run hit, the people started heading for the exits, started heading into their long, cold winter. So you look at that. You look at the fact Manny Machado had an okay series at the plate. If he heats up, watch out. But the numbers 8 and 9 hitters came through big time for the Padres. That's what's so great about the playoffs. You get a hitter or a couple of hitters who are hot in an area of the batting order where you don't expect them to deliver offensively, and you're off to the races. So the Mets are now out of the way. If you're the Dodgers, you have to be very, very concerned, particularly since their manager, Dave Roberts, went out on a limb at the start of the season to predict that the Dodgers would win the World Series. Well, guess what? He's got his arms full, and he knows it. The Dodgers know that. Are the Dodgers going to go to the World Series? I would think they're the odds-on favorite. But the San Diego Padres, I think, are going to make this an interesting series. Why? Because, first of all, they're a good ball club. They're a talented ball club with a deep lineup, and they have a good pitching staff. Not only starting pitchers, but in the bullpen. So it should be a fascinating series. As for the Mets, this goes to show you money alone cannot buy a ball club. That you've got to put together a baseball infrastructure that, well, in many cases resembles the Dodgers. Dodgers have deep pockets. Their owners are billionaires too, but they put together a baseball infrastructure that goes beyond payroll. And the Mets have to do the same thing. I think that their owner, Steve Cohen, is smart enough to realize that. The billionaire owner, I think, understands you've got to put together a baseball infrastructure that's more than payroll. So I think he believes that. But in the meantime, the Mets undergo another colossal collapse, and their manager, Buck Showalter, before we can assign him to the Hall of Fame, before, as some writers like to do, make it appear as if Showalter invented baseball, could he be successful in the playoffs first? What's that, 7 out of 8 playoff games his teams have lost? And listen, I like Showalter. I think he's a very good manager. I'm not about to put him in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. All the Mets had to do was win one game, and they couldn't against the Atlanta Braves. They got swept by the Chicago Cubs, a 3-game series at Citi Field in September. How big was that series now? All they had to do throughout September, when we were constantly reminded they had the easiest schedule in all of baseball, was win one more game than they did. And they couldn't do it. Couldn't beat the Cubs, struggled with the Nationals in Washington. They couldn't beat the Braves, obviously, in Atlanta. All they had to do was beat Atlanta once, and they could not do it. So what does that 101-win season get them? It doesn't even get them a feel-good persona. How can you feel good if you're a Mets fan about this season? I mean, the Mets fans were talking back in July that they had it all sewed up. Remember, they had a 10.5-game lead on June 1st. And also remember, in August, they had a 7-game lead on the Braves, and they blew that. So if you're a Mets fan, you can't have that feel-good feeling now. And what we do know is that the Mets have a lot of work ahead of them, that this was a club that was built to win this year. For their manager, Buck Showalter, they were built to win this year. And now they've got contracts expiring. They've got decisions to make. They have a baseball infrastructure they have to build. Yeah, they've got some prospects. There's no question. Francisco Alvarez is a prospect. Brett Beatty, even Mark Vientos. You can build your team around an Alonso, about a Lindor, around a McNeil. You win by having strength up the middle, and some of the pieces are there. But also keep in mind the New York Mets have not won a World Series since 1986. Keep in mind that since that time, the Marlins have won 2 World Series. The Kansas City Royals have won a World Series in back-to-back pennants. Their World Series championship coming at the expense of the Mets. Mets have a lot of work ahead of them, and you can put any kind of description on this 2022 season for the Mets, but unless that description includes colossal collapse, then you've got to come to the realization this club has a lot of work ahead of it. So, that said, let's not make it appear as if the Mets lost to the Bad News Bears. They lost to a very, very good baseball team. But it's also a disappointing season for them. And one other thing about Showalter, having Musgrove checked out by the umpires. When you make that kind of a move, you better be right. And if he actually believed, because of the data they were getting showing that the spin rate was higher than it normally is for Musgrove, if you actually believed that he was using some kind of substance that was illegal, or you were doing it just to rattle him, either way, you better be right. You better understand Musgrove's persona, and you better be right if you're actually accusing him of using an illegal substance. Because if you're not, what you've just done is fire him up even more. And Musgrove answered the best way he knows how, by going out on the mound and after dominating the Mets for 5 innings, dominating the Mets for 2 more innings. So, congratulations to the San Diego Padres. Tip your cap to the Padres. For the New York Mets, this season, I don't care, 101 wins this season can only be described as a disappointing season that finishes with a colossal collapse. What do you think? I welcome your comments. Just put them down below the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to my channel.